I came to Laurelbroth House to measure angles that would never stay measured. The county's new drainage map required a survey of every structure within 5 miles of the widening marsh, and my supervisor sent me, the junior cartographer, because nobody else wants to paddle that far. The assignment sounded simple: confirm the building's coordinates, log its elevation, leave. What my supervisor failed to mention, what perhaps he didn't know, was that the old mansion had begun to subside into the swamp at a steady, almost polite pace of 1 centimeter each night, like a gentleman lowering himself for a bow he intended to hold forever. I reached the place in the violet hush after sunset, the sky clotted with frog song. My small skiff slid between cypress trunks whose roots jutted like arthritic knuckles. Laurelbroth loomed ahead, a French colonial manor wrapped by iron balconies and angry vines, its paint long peeled to the color of bone. The front steps still cleared the black water by half a foot, and I tied my rope to a stone griffin's wing. When my boots touched the lowest marble riser, it bobbed as though the whole house were afloat, not anchored to brick pilings that once met solid ground. I steadied myself, checked my altimeter, and found the first discrepancy. By last year's survey, the threshold should have sat 133 centimeters higher. I entered anyway. The foyer smelled of damp velvet and something sweeter, a faint cologne that prickled the back of my throat. Dust rippled across the parquet like a gray tide disturbed by wind. Though no windows were open, each step I took seemed to disturb another. Invisible feet climbed behind me, descended ahead of me, strolled across balconies above. The house was large enough that echoes could trick the ear, but these held the rhythmic certainty of practiced etiquette. I ignored them. Professional detachment is a second skin for surveyors, and marked the central hall as my datum line. While measuring, I heard a key turn in a lock that no longer existed, followed by a sigh, followed by the whisper of skirts. I paused. When nothing further happened, I resumed my work. But the mathematics no longer reassured me. The numbers on my clipboard added to a silent confession. At its current sinking rate, Laurelbroth would disappear entirely in less than 15 years. Perhaps that was merciful. Night fell completely, swallowing the hall. My headlamp caught motes thudding past, as though gravity had grown heavier. I should have set camp on the long mound, what was left of it. Yet, I felt compelled to finish mapping interior elevations before the floor dipped another millimeter. With every level stroke of my laser, the building's angles sagged anew, no longer matching the schematics I'd studied. It was as if the mansion were alive, adjusting its posture, preparing for some inevitable descent. Hunger finally forced me to stop. I withdrew to a side parlor and unwrapped cold bread and cheese. The instant I swallowed the first bite, a gramophone crackled behind me, though my beam revealed only a wine-dark room with overturned armchairs. Then came strings, muted at first, but blossoming into a waltz. 3/4 time. Johannes Strauss, maybe. The melody swelled until walls shuddered. In the corner of my eye, figures in brocade coats and swan feather gowns spiraled between the settees. But the moment I pivoted fully, nothing remained except dust swirling in the cone of my lamp. Still, the gramophone played, needle lifting, resetting, locked in endless refrain. I left the parlor, heart racing. The music followed, threading through corridors with a confidence that said, "We know every turn here. We rehearsed for centuries." At last I located the aging device in what had been a small salon. Its brass horn glowed like a harvest moon. The record spun, but the grooves were visibly blank. When I lifted the arm, the music continued in the air, unanchored, serene. "I'm just here to measure," I told the emptiness. The waltz declined to comment. I decided to spend the night in the former library on the second floor, away from waterline worries. There I found journals left by Oswald Tremaine, last Lord of Laurelbroth, dated 1892 to 1910. Oswald's script began crisp, ended jagged. One early entry described hiring a Viennese architect to build the sunken ballroom. The phrase alarmed me. According to local records, the mansion contained only 2 stories and a half-buried cellar. But Oswald wrote of an underground chamber paneled in lapis lazuli, fitted with mirrors and stained glass lamps designed to refract candlelight into perpetual dusk. He wanted his guests to feel suspended between day and night, between land and water, between breath and its final sigh. Another entry, dated autumn 1901, confessed regret. During the inaugural masquerade, a subsidence tremor fractured the ballroom's foundation. Water from a newly redirected canal rushed in. Guests in jewel-toned costumes continued waltzing, believing the rising tide an opulent stunt, until chandeliers hissed out and the ceiling bulged. 206 souls drowned within an hour. Still clasped in dance position, Oswald alone survived, dragged upward by a servant who then succumbed. The Lord sealed the stairwell, bribed officials, and lived thereafter in solitude while the great house began its nightly sinking 1 centimeter, same as now, for each step of the waltz that dared not end. I closed the journal, listened. Somewhere beneath floorboards, water licked stone. The gramophone had ceased. In its silence bloomed a softer sound. Slippers gliding, gowns brushing, breath intact, my mouth dried. If the ballroom truly lay beneath me, then so did bodies, or what remained of them. No rational surveyor would investigate before dawn, yet rationality had eroded like everything else here. I wanted proof. I wanted to mark the forbidden coordinates, to tell the county that the mansion's heart sat deeper than archives allowed. Flashlight in hand, I followed the scent of salt water down a servant's staircase, whose banister bowed like a reed. At the bottom waited a copper door, green with oxidation, bearing a sign in French, Accession interdite. The knob refused my grip until I turned it counterclockwise, the opposite of every door above. An architect's riddle, perhaps? The seal broke with a gasp. A corridor slanted downward. Its walls were mirrored, reflecting my lone beam into a hall of infinite tunnels. I descended until my boots touched black water. The corridor kept lowering until completely submerged. The mansion must have sunk, since Oswald bricked it shut. Yet I noticed peculiar buoys, globes of glass stuck to the ceiling, faintly luminescent, casting mottled nets of green light that writhed like fish. My fear became fascination. What design, what hubris, what devotion to spectacle compelled someone to electrify pearls for the dead? At the corridor's end, an archway opened into a cavernous space, so vast my light fell short of the opposite wall. Water reached mid-shin. Floating debris brushed me, program leaflets, wilted garlands, the brim of a top hat. Then the music returned, richer than any gramophone. Violins swept in from all directions, percussion thrumming through the floor's submerged boards. The room showed itself in glimpses, colonnades draped with algae, balconies festooned with barnacle lace. And below, a polished dance floor, still visible through 5 feet of water, tilted but intact. Couples glided upon it or within it, as though gravity were optional currency. Their gowns bloomed like sea anemones. Their coattails fluttered in impossible currents. Some faces retained pearls for eyes. Others were only silhouettes. Yet I recognized elements from portraits that hung upstairs. The Duchess, with her emerald choker, the Admiral whose medals now reflected ghostlight, Lady Mire de Chanterre, Oswald's betrothed who reportedly wore silver slippers stitched with opals. She revolved now, opals glinting, though her slippers barely touched the floor. None of them sank fully, nor rose past a certain line, as if tethered to the original moment of drown. The result was a mid-Sauter ballet, endlessly beginning, never ending. I could have turned, climbed back, sealed the door, reported structural instability and fled, but an impulse stronger than duty drew me forward. Perhaps it was the mathematics of tragedy. My life had been precise, predictable. Here was a system outside Euclid, a proof that refused closure. I stepped off the corridor's last stone and waded toward the submerged floor. When depth reached my waist, currents rearranged my balance. I dropped my flashlight. The beam spiraled downward, landing on marquetry that depicted a compass rose, north, south, east, west, vanishing under silt. "Good evening," said a voice behind me. I spun and beheld Lady Mire. Up close, her features were intact, though bloodless, as if carved from moon. Her lips parted in a smile that belonged neither to welcome nor warning. "You've come," she said. I swallowed brackish air. "I'm surveying." "Surveying?" She tasted the word like fruit ripe past prime. "Ah, yes, measuring angles and heights. The living are so fond of numbers. We, too, keep figures." She lifted a gloved hand and showed an ivory dance card. Rows of names had been crossed out in rust-colored ink. "Those are partners," I guessed. "Partners, centimeters. What difference?" She laughed softly. "Each night the house descends by 1 centimeter, and with each centimeter someone from above chooses to join us. The arithmetic balances. Tonight, the tally indicated a vacancy." She drifted closer. Water parted for her, yet left not a ripple behind. I saw now that her silver slippers could not possibly fit living feet. They flared too narrow, designed for steps that no longer bore weight. "I can't dance," I lied. "Elle can dance," she replied, "when the floor is this forgiving." Her hand grazed my sleeve, lighter than mist, yet colder than iron. Music crescendoed. The other couples noticed, turning their blank or radiant faces toward me. I was the novelty, the newest variation in their endless pattern, a fresh note to sustain the chord. A fresh note to sustain the chord. The Lady Mire lifted my hand into proper position. My body obeyed before thought could object. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. The waltz consumed me. The floor seemed level now, solving the tilt by some occult geometry. Around us, dancers parted, forming lanes like pews in a church whose service was salvation by immersion. Yet I still breathed. How? I realized then that the water no longer breached my collar. We floated within it, as if within air, or as if our lungs assumed amphibious talent. Mire's eyes glimmered with satisfaction. "The trick," she whispered, "is to accept neither drowning nor breathing. You must dwell at the threshold." We revolved under arches festooned with drowned orchids. I glimpsed the ceiling far above, gilded coffers painted with constellations that dripped slowly, each star an elongated teardrop. My pulse slowed to match the music's cadence. I forgot my clipboard, forgot elevation charts, forgot the canoe waiting by the stone griffin. My world narrowed to the turn, the pivot, the glide. Then a pain flared at my ankle. Someone clutched there, heavy with barnacles. I looked down. Another dancer, faceless, anchored to the floor by rusted chains that trailed off into a cracked drain. He, or it, attempted to pull me downward, to reorder the figures. My heart returned, pounding. Reflex wrenched my foot free. The silence that followed was louder than the orchestra. The dancers halted, music stuttered, water itself seemed to freeze. Lady Mire regarded me with neither anger nor pity, but curiosity, as a scientist watches an unexpected phase change. "Still uncertain?" she asked. "I have to go," I said. "To whom?" Her gaze flicked upward toward the mansion's shell. "No one waits." "That may be true," I admitted, choking on sudden grief I hadn't expected. "But I do." The notion jolted me. I waited for myself. The self who relied on maps and modest paychecks, who believed surfaces mattered. That self needed to keep appointments, both mundane and profound. Without him, there would be no witness to Laurel Broth's last centimeter, no chart to warn the world. I released Lady Mire's hand. She did not resist, only inclined her head as if to say, "So, this is your step tonight." The orchestra resumed, but quieter, as though my refusal tuned them down. I turned, found my flashlight's beam still shining like a fallen star on the compass rose. By swimming rather than walking, I reached it, retrieved it. The water had grown colder. The house, realigning, reminded me of weight and time. When I slogged back into the mirrored corridor, the water rose behind me, urging haste. At the copper door, hinges shrieked. The mansion above must have settled further, compressing passage space. I squeezed through, pounded upstairs. Every landing felt misaligned, new cracks veining wallpaper. Near the foyer, plaster snowed down, dust sticking to my wet clothes. I staggered across the trembling threshold onto the front steps. The skiff remained, but sat higher in water. The step beneath me submerged as I watched. I untied the rope, shoved off. Laurel broth exhaled, cymbals shattering outward in a sigh of centuries, and dropped another visible notch, as if acknowledging that my vacancy would be accounted for tomorrow night. The return paddles stretched like penance. Dawn found me at the edge of the paved road, where my truck waited. I looked back. Laurel Broth's second-story balconies kissed water now, vines already adjusting their embrace. From somewhere within the flooded skeleton drifted a muffled waltz, no longer triumphant, but resigned, like music heard through a neighboring wall at 3 a.m. I filed my report that afternoon, stating structural collapse inevitable, area unsafe. Immediate condemnation required. Agency procedure demanded numerical proof, so I included precise nightly subsidence, 1 centimeter, verified. I omitted the word ghosts, substituted tidal press. The clerk stamped it, none the wiser. Yet some nights I dream of the dance continuing beneath stiller swamps, each centimeter converting walls to sediment, lives to legend. In the dream, Lady Mire raises her dance card. The final line remains empty. I wake before she writes my name. Heart waltzing in a chest that is, for now, still dry.